Okay, so we're here early on a Monday morning as usual to do the recording, and there is light in the sky. So spring is coming, and we've got this, the January hiatus, which is definitely going to end in February now, which is fantastic. And I just thought we'd look ahead, because even though we've got nothing to talk about in January, oh my God, February is looking fantastic. I mean, I'm going to call it Fighting February, Fabulous February, whatever you want to call it. As a boxing fan, it feels like we've got this sort of log jam. We're keen to see the live fights, and I'm just going to look at 5 highlights of February. 5 of the best fights, the best British fights that I think are coming up in February, because there's absolutely loads of action going on. So I'm just going to quickly run through my 5 highlights over the 4 weekends in February. So the first one is Liam Williams against Christie Eubank Jr. So this is taking place at the Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff. It's a middleweight clash. It's a grudge match, not a title match, but it's a domestic grudge match. And it looks like a fantastic fight. I mean, Eubank is coming in. This is the slight favourite. He's coming off 2 good wins under the new tutelage of Roy Jones Jr. Liam Williams is coming off that loss to Dimitri Shadradny, in a WBO world title fight. But there's 1 year between them. Eubank is 32, Williams is 31. Really coming into their primes. Although interestingly, when we look at Christie Eubank Jr. has got to fulfil some of this potential. Some of this, we say, he's coming into his prime. He's 32. His dad won his first world title when he was 24 and was retired by the time he was 32. But this, clash is mooted as leading to a world title clash. And like I say, Eubank is coming in as the favourite. But I think it's a really interesting clash. Liam Williams has moved from Dominic Ingle to Adam Booth, and Eubank has kicked off a little bit about that, because Booth also trains his cousin Harlem Eubank, who's also on the bill at 12-0. But it's it's a fascinating clash. I think it's really it's a little bit of make or break for both fighters. I do slightly tip towards Eubank. You've got to remember that Eubank obviously had lost to George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders, but put in good performances there. And Williams has got to move out of the way. He can't stand in front of Eubank, but he's got the home crowd at that Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff, so that is going to be a bit of a factor. I'm going to edge towards Eubank slightly, and Eubank is the bookies' favourite. Eubank is 4-11 with the bookies, draws 16-1, and Williams is 2-1. But I think it's going to be an absolutely cracking fight. So really looking forward to that. And moving on quickly, on the 12th of February, the next weekend, we have Daniel Jacobs against John Ryder. So John Ryder, is almost a perennial challenger. Obviously, we know he did, he lost to Brand Billy Joe Saunders very close. A lot of people think he was very unlucky to lose to Callum Smith for the WBC title. Now he gets a chance at a non-title bout, but it's a real quality operator in Danny Jacobs, who obviously has pushed Triple G and Canelo hard, in the fights that they had, and as a 2-time middleweight world champion. So a really tough assignment. This is at the Alexandra Palace in London. So Ryder again has home advantage. Jacobs is obviously the more experienced fighter. I'm going to lean towards Ryder in this one. I think the home crowd, but it has to be the best version of John Ryder that we've ever seen. Maybe even better than when he was boxing Liam Smith. But I just think that that possibly Jacobs at 34 and up at super middle, when his best days were at middle, it's possibly a good, well-timed fight, the sort of well-timed fight that Frank Warren was so good at picking. Maybe Eddie Hearn's picked it this time. And but it's going to be a fascinating clash. But it's going to have to be the best John Ryder, and I think it could be roared on by a home crowd. And it's going to be a fascinating fight. So that one again, Jacobs is the bookie's favourite at 4-7. Ryder is 13-8, and the draw is 18-1. So the next weekend, up in Manchester, the AO Arena in Manchester, live on Sky Sports, we have Amir Khan against Kell Brook. Now, we're talking about ages of fighters, and the Eubank's dad was retired at 32. He's seen as coming in his prime at 32. Well, these guys, Amir Khan and Kell Brook are both 35. They seem to have been around forever, particularly Amir Khan, obviously, coming to real prominence at the 2008 Olympics. But they're a bit long in the tooth. This fight should have happened 5 or 6 years ago, and a lot of people, and probably me included, when it was announced, were a bit like, why don't they just go off into the sunset? Do we really want to see this? But actually, people seem to have been a bit captivated by it recently, and the imponderable really is who's declined the most. Brook is seen as a bit of the harder puncher. Khan is a bit of the better boxer. So it's whose skills have declined, and what's going to happen in that fight. So it's going to be a big fight. Incidentally, Fraser Clark makes his pro debut on the undercard. But in terms of bookies odds, Brook is 8-13, Khan is 6-4, and the draw is 25-1. So like I said, Brook is coming in there as the favourite. But a fascinating clash. And then if you want to go into real quality fighters absolutely boxing in their prime, on the 26th of February, we have Josh Taylor, the undisputed lightweight champion, against Jack Catterall at the Glasgow Arena on Sky Sports. So this is the Taylor's first defence of the undisputed title that he won by unifying all the belts against Jose Ramirez last year. So, and Catterall is the mandatory WBO challenger and has been for some time, and actually stepped aside from his WBO mandatory position to let Taylor, go into that fight with Ramirez and unify all the belts, which obviously if he can now beat Taylor would be a very smart move. Catterall is undefeated. He's trained by Jamie Moore, and obviously Josh Taylor has recently moved to Ben Davison. But this is a fascinating clash. I think it's a great fight. I think Catterall is going to really bring it in the early rounds. I think it's going to be a bit tight in the early rounds. I just see Taylor as such a class operator. You've got to remember he's been tested at the highest level, which Catterall hasn't. He's all that potential there. And like 26-0, but he hasn't really been tested at the highest level like Taylor has. You've got to remember 5 of Taylor's last opponents were unbeaten, like Catterall is. So this will be 6 unbeaten opponents on the spin for him. And I just think that experience is going to see him through in the later rounds. I think it's going to be a corker of a fight. Obviously, the bookies are well into Josh Taylor, but I think it's a closer fight than people say. And I think for the first early going, it's going to be a really sort of pick and fight. I see Taylor coming through on points or with a late stoppage through body shots. But it's a fascinating, absolutely mouth-watering clash. Taylor is 1-12, Catterall is 6-1, draw is 18-1. So the bookies are very heavily going in favour of Taylor, but I think it's a much better fight than that. Then on the 27th of February, so that's the Saturday. On the Sunday, just to finish off our fabulous fight in February, we've got Laurence Sockley against Michael Suzak. Now, I think, again, this is a slightly overlooked fight. People see this as second defence of Ockley's WBO title in the cruiserweight division. And obviously, the cruiserweight division is the golden ticket now, with Canelo coming up there and moving around. Suzak is a much better operator than people give him credit for. He's only previously lost once to Ilunga Makabu out in the Congo. And to be honest with you, having watched that fight, and one of our trainers here, Darius Scott, was involved in the Suzak camp for that, and is over there sparring now in preparation for this. I think Suzak would have won that fight if it had been in Poland. But obviously it was on Makabu's home ground. Makabu is now fighting Canelo, and Suzak gets another chance to get a world title and get back in the mix against Ockley at the O2 Arena in London. Now Ockley, is a class operator, but I think this is a really hard fight. This is a 50-50 pick and fight. So it's going to be really exciting. Sunday at the O2, and that finishes off fabulous fight in February. So just loads to look forward to, Peter. The sun is coming up, the days are getting longer, the boxing is coming back, and it's looking fantastic. I can't wait to see all this. So next week we can get into normal previews when we can look at more depth about Williams Eubank Jr. But fascinating, fabulous February is coming up. Can't wait.